Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give a few minutes for participants to come into the webinar room. My name is Hillary Crawford. I'm the grants manager at COCA. And today, this is a webinar about our FY23 cultural grant funding round 2, which is in order to distribute the city funding that we were awarded for FY23. And just so you are aware, the webinar is being recorded, but you will have an opportunity to view the recording at a later date. So that hopefully will be helpful. And I am actually going to go ahead once I start the presentation and I'm going to turn off my video for that, but I'm saying hi, oops, for now. And now I'm changing things. So we will go ahead and get started out of respect for everyone's time. I appreciate you taking time out of your hurricane prep today to join us. But again, this is information about COCA's FY23 Cultural Grant Round 2, which is funded through the city funding. So if you're not familiar with COCA's grant program, the program was actually originally created in the 90s with COCA and the city and cultural organizations in the area. And the purpose of the program is to serve and support nonprofit arts and cultural organizations within the city of Tallahassee through program funding that creates broader public access, benefit, and participation in arts and cultural activities in our community, enhancing both the quality of life and our local economy. Additionally, there are goals that have been assigned to the program, and so your programming has to meet at least one of these goals, and that is to offer arts, history, or cultural programs with exemplary standards and objectives, provide educational opportunities in arts, culture, and/or history for young people or adults, and finally, serve a special or diverse population or need, fill a unique niche, or engage the community in the creative art or artistic process. And of course, some of you will meet more than one of those goals, but we do ask that you meet at least one of those. So who can apply for funding? Those of you that have applied before, probably understand that we asked for this money in order to address needs that weren't being met currently through our funding that was done through the tourist development tax. But there are some basic eligibility requirements that your organization needs to meet, and that is that you need to either be a nonprofit organization, that's a 501c3, and you should be registered as such with the Florida Department of Corporations, or a department or unit of a public entity that is an arts organization. So an example of that would be the Museum of Fine Arts at Florida State, or the Riley House at the City of Tallahassee. You must have a mission that's directly related to arts, culture, history, or heritage. You need to have a governing board of directors and bylaws. So if you are part of a public entity, you should still have, again, a board of directors that oversees your operations. You need to have at least 1 year of completed programming in your discipline. You need to have a professional staff, and those can be volunteers, but the main thing is that you need to have people that are able to manage the grant and work with COCA staff as you fulfill the requirements for your grant. And finally, you have to produce or present year-round programming within the city of Tallahassee. And because these funds are coming from the city, that is a requirement. If you are receiving funds for your program for FY23 from the CHSP or the CRA grants, then you are not eligible to receive support for the same project or program through COCA's cultural grant program this round, because it would be double dipping, as in they're both city funding. So historically, the cultural grant program was funded by a combination of city and county funds, and city funds were general revenue, and the money that was provided by the county was a portion of the tourist development tax that was earned through the county. in 2015, the county increased their investment in the grant program from half of the penny of the tourism development tax to a whole penny. And then the following year, the city removed their investment in the grant program so that our awards were funded 100% through TDT funds. However, the city has continued to contract COCA to run the cultural grant program. So what has happened is that restrictions on the tourist development tax funds have left certain organizations out of our programs, out of our grant program, that align with the original intent of the program. However, they don't meet the tourism requirement. So last year, COCA went to the city and requested a reinvestment in the program. And we advocated throughout the year. And at the September meeting, finally, the city commission unanimously approved a one-time allocation of $300,000 for FY23. So this round of the cultural grant program will be in order to distribute those funds. Now, we will continue at COCA to advocate for a recurring investment of city funds in the cultural grant program. But right now, this is us giving out that one-time appropriation. And so applicants can request up to $10,000. And the funding period is October 1 of 2022 through September 30th of 2023. Now, I realize that October 1 has already happened. Therefore, you will be able to count for reimbursement any expenses that are related to the program that is funded going back to October 1. And anything that you're requesting in your budget for the grant funds, it needs to be directly related to the programs that are creating the broader public access, benefit, and participation in arts and culture. So again, this is not for just general overhead, but very specifically for expenses that are related to those programs. Oh, and I forgot to say, I will do a Q&A at the end. If you have a question that comes up as I'm going, feel free to type it in the Q&A. Or when we start the Q&A, if you would like to raise your hand at that time, we can unmute you and you can ask your question directly. So, because this is a grant program with public funding, there are some things that you are not allowed to use your grant funds for. Those are also called non-allowable expenses. And so under that, we have, again, funds that are for general overhead that is not related to your program or promoting your program. So that would be things like an audit, a board retreat, decorating the facility, etc. Grant funds can also not be used for capital expenses. And so that includes, building projects, acquisitions, renovations, etc. And it also includes the purchase of equipment that's not related to the production of the events or exhibits. So if you were buying like a copy machine for your office, that would not be allowed. However, if you needed to, build a set for a production, that would be specific to the program. And if you have any more questions when you're doing your budget about that, I can help you out with that as well. Grant funds cannot be used for expenses incurred or obligated outside of that grant period. Again, going back to October 1, you can include those expenses, but anything before then or after September 30th is not acceptable. And finally, the City of Tallahassee discourages line item requests if you're eligible to apply for this program or others. Some other non-allowable expenses, travel basically and attendance at conference and seminars, anything that's not a real a cost for a tangible good. So contingencies, fines and penalties, interest, cash reserves, contributions and donations, endowment, fellowship, scholarships, food and beverages, including alcohol, fundraising, lobbying, mortgage payments, plaques, awards, private or exclusive entertainment. So any event that is funded through this has to be open to the public, re-granting, religious programs, staff travel, and finally third-party grant administration. So you can't do any re-granting through this program. So if you would like to apply, you may do so. We are now doing everything through the Submittable platform. So all applications must be completed using the portal. If you haven't already done so, you'll need to create a free account. You can also sign in using Google or Facebook credentials. And the nice thing about Submittable is two things. One, you are able to save a draft of your work. So, you can work on it and then come back to it. I do suggest that you save often, because I have made the mistake before of working on something and then going away from the page and then coming back and it's not saved. So I try to remember, to save as I can, because if you refresh or reset, you won't have it. And then you also, once you've submitted, if it's before the deadline's over, you can request to have your submission returned to you for editing. And then the other thing, so we will be sending you notifications through Submittable. So if you do have some sort of a spam blocking on your email, it is helpful to add the domain of the Submittable to your safe list, just to make sure that you get, those messages from me. And then moving forward, once your grant is contracted, from FY23 on, the reports and such will be done through the system. So you'll have access to those forms and receive notifications as those are assigned to you. And finally, as far as the Submittable, there is a Submitter Resource Center and Submittable customer support that are a place for you to go if you have questions about the platform. I can't, reset your email or anything like that, or, remember, anything that's related to that technical part of it, I can't help you with, but they are quite helpful and quite responsive. And so we have been pleased with their support thus far. So application checklist. So if you're looking to apply for the application, the items that you will need to have your financial records for your last completed fiscal year, along with a budget plan for this current fiscal year and for the next. You'll also need information about your board of directors and staff, information about your organization and programs. You'll need to have a proposed budget for the requested funds, impact information for FY22, including jobs, how many jobs you have funded, how many volunteers you have, your attendance, etc. And then support materials are suggested as well. And that's anything that can help explain your programs to the panel. So you can have letters of support. And I recommend that those be people that have been directly impacted by your program, and not things like, letters from your local commissioner and such. And then if you're doing any collaborations or partnerships, letters from those organizations or individuals can be helpful. If you have like a list of your productions or other past programming or publications as well, just to give the panel an idea of the types of programming that you're doing, that can be helpful as well. And there is an upload at the end, and there are 6 uploads that you can do. So, just be mindful of how much you're including when you do that. So tips for the application, and some of these are going to seem really simple, but I have to remind myself to do these sometimes. Just make sure that you read the question before you begin your answer. Sometimes our brain can kind of auto fill in things for us. So just to make sure that you're, completely aware of what the question is. Be sure that you proof your application prior to submission. I know they are working on a print view that I don't think has happened yet, but what I do with the Submittable is I just print to a PDF, and do the preview that way. But again, reading it again, and also having someone who is not familiar with your programs read it. Sometimes we know what we're doing really well and we feel like we're communicating it, and maybe we're not. So if you have, a family member or a friend that, doesn't know, like you do what you're doing, it might help them to kind of read the application and let them know if there's anything that isn't clear to them. And I would also say start early. So the portal is open now, and you are able to go in and begin your application. Again, I said before, save often, because you don't want to be in the middle of something and lose it. Collaborate. You do have the ability at the top. So when you go into the application in the top right-hand corner, you'll see something that says manage collaborators. And so through that, you can invite via email folks to help you work on the application. So if you have one person that's doing your budget, one person that's doing the programming side, that can be a collaborative effort, and also a way for them to come in and look at, and do some proofreading for you as well. Also, don't wait till the last minute. I understand that this is a little bit of a tight turnaround. We did, get the money a little bit later than we had hoped. So we're trying to get this done so we can get funds out to you, early next year. But the portal does close at 11:59 p.m. on December 8th. Now, technical assistance from COCA staff is available Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. So if you try to call me at 10 o'clock on December 8th, you will not reach me. So I would just say, go ahead and try to get that done. Pretend like it's due on the 7th, just to make sure that if there are any issues, we can sort that out. And finally, please ask me if you have any questions. I'm here. I have, and I'll show you in a minute, my calendar, but you can sign up for a consultation. I can look at your application before you submit. I'm totally happy to help you out. But again, you have to ask. And then, so once your application is submitted, it's very similar, obviously, to the other process. We are not having to do a secondary eligibility review. So applications will only be reviewed by COCA staff to confirm that you are eligible for the program. And then all eligible applications will be forwarded to the citizen review panel. And that panel meeting is going to take place on January 11th. And that's at 9:30 a.m. I am currently working on recruiting panelists, and I forgot to put the link in here, but there is a form on our website for panelist nominations. So if you want to recommend anyone, or if for some reason you decide not to apply and would like to do it, that's great to do that if you can, or if you know somebody that can. I know it's very helpful when you're applying for grants to serve on a panel. It kind of gives you the ability to look at it from a different way, and it really does help with your grant writing when you see what goes into evaluating them. But at that meeting, which you are encouraged to attend, the panelists will have already read all the applications. They will have made preliminary scores, and then at the meeting, they're going to finalize those scores and make funding recommendations. And then at our January 19th board meeting, the recommendations will be presented to the COCA board, and then contract and payments will go out in February. And it'll be as early as I can in February. So the review criteria for the most part is the same. However, the tourism section has been replaced with a section for community impact. So again, with organizational capacity, the panelists are still going to be looking at your budgets and your staffing and your resources, and just making sure that your organization has the capacity to complete the proposed programming. And then looking at the program evaluation, they're going to say, look at your mission and, does this program align with your mission and the goals of the cultural grant program? And they'll be saying, what is the impact in relation to the funding request? And then also, what are the goals and evaluation methods of the proposed program? So that part is the same, and there's 40 points for each of those criteria. Now, community impact is what has replaced the tourism criteria of 20 points. So the city released a strategic plan last year, and they had several priorities that were listed in the strategic plan. So you are asked to identify how your program is aligned with any one of these 4 city priorities. And those are economic development, impact on poverty, public safety, and quality of life. And I have some information for you to kind of assist with that. So some of the resources, we are currently doing the surveying for the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 survey for Americans for the Arts. However, the Arts and Economic Prosperity 5 calculator is still available on their website, and that can be used to estimate your local economic impact on the economy. Additionally, looking at the impact on poverty, the Florida Chamber came up with a list of 10 root causes of poverty. And so of those, several directly can be influenced by arts and culture. And so that's lack of employment opportunities, inequities in education and workforce development, unsafe environment, and lack of recognition and access in a community. And there's more information about how I came to these if you look at the guidelines and you read it. But the main thing for all of these is the Economic Prosperity 5 calculator. And then finally, the other, the art and social, oops, and it looks like the link didn't carry over. So before I send the presentation out, I'll redo the link. But there's also an Arts and Social Impact Explorer on the Americans for the Arts website. And that's really helpful. I did kind of a deep dive with that, but it's really interesting. And you can go into, there's a wheel, and you basically look at, all the different, ways that arts can have impact. And for each of the different sections, there's a one sheet and it references research. And it's really detailed and I think fascinating. And then finally, looking at quality of life, creating healthy communities, Arts and Public Health in America initiative. So they link arts to being beneficial for public health in 5 key areas: collective trauma, racism, mental health, social exhaustion, and isolation, and chronic disease. And so I'll make that link active as well. But again, obviously we're not, asking you to reinvent the wheel here or, have some extensive data, but we know that your programs are providing benefits to the community. And I'm just asking you to identify how you think that they are assisting the city in achieving their goals. And so what you'll do is select the areas that you think that your program contributes to, and then you'll just have a brief section to say why you think that that is. And that will help us to, since this is the first time that we've done this method of the cultural grant with the city funds as kind of a separate application, that will help us moving forward as we look at how we want to track information from you so that it is meaningful for the city, and also so that it helps us continue to be able to advocate for more funding from them. So the funding order for this application, so everyone can request $10,000. Priority funding will be given to any organizations that were not awarded funding in round 1 of cultural grant for FY23, or minority organizations or underserved organizations. And so for this program, the minority organizations are composed of at least 51% persons who are Asian, Indian, Asian Pacific, Black, Hispanic, and Native American. And that includes staff, board, artists, and volunteers. And then the underserved organization is any organization that has an annual operating budget of $150,000 or less. So all of those folks will be, priority 1. And then once that is done, all the remaining applications will be funded, and they'll be ranked by score, and then funded until the funds are exhausted. And if there is any funding remaining, it will be reallocated to FY24. So once you get your grant, there are some things that you're expected to do in order to be compliant with your contract. So you're required to use COCA city and county logos on your promotional materials for programs funded through the grant. If you're doing that in an online format, then the logos need to be linked to the respective sites of those organizations. You're expected to have your promotional materials approved by COCA's Communications and Marketing Manager, Samantha Sumler, prior to publication. And that's to ensure that you have used the logos correctly, that they're the right size, etc. So that is a very important step, because sometimes we have people after the fact that send us something and the logo isn't correct, and that can cause issues. We ask that you track attendance and residents that are served through your programs. You will be required to submit a final report on the activities that are funded through this grant, and also the expenses. And you will be given an expenditure log so that you can track those grant fund expenditures. You will be expected to keep records of all transactions that are related to grant funds, and that's invoices and receipts and payments, etc. And those will be requested from COCA if you are audited when we go through our auditing process. So it's important to make sure that you're keeping good records, because we don't control who gets audited. We just get a list from the auditor. So you never know, and it might be your lucky day. And we also ask that you post your activities and events at tallahasseearts.org. If you're not familiar with that, that is a resource where folks can find events and classes and other things like that. And we also use it in our promotional efforts. So it really helps us when you list your events there and classes, workshops, whatever, because we like to promote what grantees are doing, but we have to know what you're doing to be able to do that. Here are some resources. The guidelines are online. This is a link to the grant portal, which is the submittable. And then finally, there's a link if you would like to schedule a consultation with me. If you haven't applied before, you need to schedule a consultation before you start, just so that we can make sure that we're on the same page and that you understand, that you're eligible for the program. But anyone can have one, even if you've submitted, loads of grants. But I do like to try to talk to you before you start, if you haven't done it before, because it breaks my heart when I get an application and it's not eligible, and it could have been, but there just wasn't a conversation. Other resources that we have are Communications and Marketing Manager Samantha Sumler. She also has a sign up where you can schedule a consultation with her. And she can talk to you about, but we have a media guide for you that's online. We also have advertising opportunities, and we have a newsletter where you can post your events and opportunities, and also you can subscribe to it so that you can be informed of what else is happening in our community. So I'm going to go ahead and look at okay, so I have a question. If I am at a school, can we apply? Patricia, I will talk to you about that, because usually like school districts are not eligible for that. So that would be, I would maybe need to have more information about that. But if you want to send me an email, we can talk about that further. We do have a teacher grant that's directly for teachers. But again, with the public entities, and the reason that I feel like you wouldn't be eligible is because the public entities, such as opening nights and such, they do have the board and the governing body part of it, whereas the school, I don't believe, would have that. So I don't think that you would be eligible, but we can certainly discuss that further. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, great. Sahara threw the all my links that I was missing in there. Thank you so much. Do we have to be one of these categories to apply? No, you don't have to be no, you don't have to be one of those. It is required for you to say, I thought there was a none of the above. So if there isn't, I'll fix that. Okay, so I'll correct that, because yeah, it's supposed to be. And the main thing for that is just so that I can know to put you in the priority. So thank you for telling me that, because I will correct that. Because what it's supposed to do is just automatically on the back end label your application. So there was supposed to be a none of the above. So I will fix that. Thank you for that, Juliet. Does anyone else have a question? Sorry, my dogs are going crazy outside. I don't see that I have any more questions. Oh, wait, Juliet, are you? Juliet, I gave you permission to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it through the Q&A.
Oh,
I should
okay,
have put
you
my
did.
hand down. My
It's
apologies.
okay. No, it's okay. So does anyone else have any questions before we stop?
There's a question in the chat from Dan Johnson.
Thank you so much. So yes, if you had an event on November 5th, any expenses that are from October 1 on, yes, you would be able to apply for those, and those could be reimbursed. So it's similar. I don't know if any of you applied for or were funded through the ARPA program, but similar to that, where you would just put in for something that has already happened. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any more questions. I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if am I still sharing the screen? Can you still see the screen? Sahara, can you still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what's happening. I'm going to go ahead and go back just to the previous slide, which is where you can schedule a consultation if you need to. And that way we can just sit down and have a meeting and we can talk about what you're doing. And oh yes, sorry. Yes, my email, I'm sorry, is Hillary with 2 L's at tallahasseearts.org. And so you can reach me there via email. And then you can also set up a consultation. And when you're going through the application, if you do have any things like what Juliet just mentioned, where there was the answer that was missing, please just send me an email and I will fix that right away. I learned some things in the first round, like for instance, when you enter numbers, you don't enter $ because it messes up the calculation. So I try to make notes of those as I go through, but anything that you catch like that, if you could just let me know, I would appreciate it, just so that I can continue to improve the process as we transfer fully to this new online system. And I hope that you're enjoying it if you're using it.
We have another question in the Q&A.
Okay. So Dinah, we don't take hard copies of anything, but what you could do is you could like scan it and just upload it that way. We just don't deal with touching things anymore. It's all online and it just allows the panelists to have it there. But certainly anything that you have that's on paper could be scanned. And if you don't have access to a scanner, they may have them at the library. What I do is I use my phone actually and take pictures of it. And then it, I have an HP print app that turns it in my phone basically into a scanner. But, we could certainly talk about that offline if you need any technical assistance with that. But yeah, we do ask that you put everything in the portal and not providing, hard copies. All right, well, it looks like for now, we have answered all the questions that you had. If there's anything further that you want to discuss with me, email me, set up a consultation. Again, if you've applied for the cultural grant before, very similar process. However, if you were funded previously, do make sure that you are not including, expenses that were funded through that county grant that has already been contracted. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign off and say good afternoon to you and good luck. I hope you stay safe. If we do, in fact, end up with a hurricane, and if we don't have a hurricane, have a great weekend. It's holiday weekend. So, oops. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So thank you so much. And until next time, bye.